Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's most distinguished policemen. He heads India's leading investigating agency, the CBI. And even though the mention of his name might send tremors through many spines, he's often described as someone who can make friends with the devil. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Shankar Mishra.
Thank you very much.
You head the CBI, and it is India's premier investigating agency. Your name sends terror down many spines. How do you describe yourself?
It should not be, but the organization does such work that it spreads like that, but not for any person like me.
How effective would you as the director of the organization consider CBI truly is, beyond the image of it? I think it really has two images, in the sense that that one is that institutionally, people are frightened of it at two levels. A, because it is the purveyor of justice, of investigation, of looking at acts of corruption. But at the same time, it's not always perceived as being crisp, clean, efficient, free of political color.
Central Bureau of Investigation has a record of being fair, and without favor it works, and it has enjoyed the confidence of the people. And we must be knowing that cases by the constitutional courts are entrusted to CBI day in and day out. So I will not agree that CBI people do not have faith in CBI, but it has certain constraints because it started as anti-corruption unit, and after 1986, when constitutional courts have started giving cases to CBI with its limited manpower, it was not able to cope up with all the cases which have been entrusted to it. But the fact remains that given the power for the organized crimes as the only central law enforcement agency, it will do better in the future.
I think to place this in perspective, you do have a conviction rate which is higher than I think most people outside immediately perceive, which is around 70%. But I think that's what gives this color to the CBI is I think the more politically sensitive cases which seem to go on forever. You have Bofors, you have the fodder scam, cases like these. So the public perception is that these are not brought to fruition, not brought to completion. What are some of the difficulties that you have in pursuing high-profile cases like this?
You see, CBI is entrusted with cases where people who are powerful are involved, where our criminals are not ordinary criminals. And the criminal justice system is such that there are so many factors which are operating for a case to be expeditiously taken into trial and taken to its logical conclusion, because we have more than 6,000 cases under trial in different courts. That is due to reasons that the CBI courts are less. The judges don't take up CBI cases because they are so cumbersome and so tedious. And we are trying on this reason to do something to have our own special courts for CBI to try the cases. And also, as you said, that the cases which are political overtones, where you cannot make CBI responsible in the sense that the matters are being referred to the higher courts, and the battery of leading lawyers were put up by them. So in these cases, the cases gets delayed.
But looking at something like, during in the Ayodhya case, there was the predicament in a sense that the Home Minister was somebody who was under investigation. What kind of difficulties does that place on the CBI when the Home Minister of the country is under investigation and you're an arm of the government finally?
That's right, but whether Home Minister is involved or anybody is involved, we have a process, we have a legal scrutiny of each case. And in CBI there is inbuilt system of legal scrutiny. And in cases also where we need that higher legal opinion is required, we refer it to the law ministry, get the opinion of Attorney General. So this much I can say that after legal scrutiny of very high order, the CBI comes to a decision. And it is a different matter that whatever decision you take, there will be some criticism or other when the person occupies a high position in life.
What are the constitutional provisions that might protect or insulate you from direct political influence? I mean, we have to recognize that we live in a society where we're all in some measure under varying degrees of influence and pressure, and it becomes an aspect of personal integrity to the degree that you're able to resist it. So apart from the calling of personal integrity on the director of the CBI and the officer investigating it, what are the constitutional provisions to protect you?
The fact remains that CBI operates under a government department. We are now operating under Department of Personnel. With regard to the management of CBI, the superintendence of government remains. But the fact remains that we are an investigating agency. Investigating agency means we investigated cases under CRPC, IPC, Evidence Act, and right from day one, the FIR were accountable to the court and court alone. But interferences we are talk of is depending from person to person who wants to bend it, do it this way or that way to satisfy this person or that person. But in spite of making it a statutory body, investigating body, which will be extremely good idea like Lokayukt and other bodies which have been set up, but the accountability of CBI should ease to the court and court alone.
To what degree can you respond to perceived corruption without waiting for a formal complaint? There are many instances where it's apparent to the community, it's apparent to the media that a particular bureaucrat or official is corrupt. Do you have to wait for a complaint? Do you have to wait for something, a reference to be made to you?
No, as I said, we can take suo motu cognizance if sanction is there, or we can wait for a complaint to investigate into the case.
But in waiting for that, you become aware. When I say you as an individual, you're the director of the CBI and something comes to your attention. Are you able to just pick up the threads and act on it?
Let me make it very clear. To root out corruption is not the job of CBI alone. We are an outfit of 6,000 only in this country, vis-a-vis government departments, public sector undertakings. So the corruption, first duty of checking corruption is the departmental head. You have to set your house in order. You have to lock your house so that thief doesn't enter. You cannot say that there is police and let me keep it open. So that's the fundamental duty of every departmental head to check corruption. We are an outfit, investigating outfit, which to investigate, to book that person and take him to the court of law. So the cases of higher magnitude, scams, should not naturally be investigated by the CBI.
You're watching a conversation with the director of the Central Bureau of Investigation. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching a conversation with the director of the Central Bureau for Investigation. Mr. Mishra, as a citizen of India, not just as the head of the premier investigating agency, how frustrated are you by the all-prevalent perception of corruption and the experience of corruption that most of us have? And in what ways would you begin to look at addressing this? In a sense, the role of an investigating agency is that you identify someone who's corrupt and maybe he's prosecuted, and then that becomes a deterrent to other people. How do you look at the issue of corruption and the aspect of trying to resolve this?
As you said, it's a very good question in the sense that corruption in this country is not considered a crime. We call a thief and socially ostracize, but we don't ostracize a corrupt man in the society. It has historical reasons, and it has also a social economic milieu in which you are living. Because corruption was no crime, it was called a white collar crime. There was no act to check corruption till 1946 and the same Prevention of Corruption Act in 1988. So it is a society which has to realize that corruption is a crime and their social acceptance should not be there. I have seen, look, I will give an example in my village. A person committed theft of a coconut. He was called a thief and a thief till he died. But in the same village, you find clerks earning a petty pay and all that, having 3-storied building, having a good social status. They don't call him a thief or chore in society. And this is because of historical reasons, and people thought in this country that a policeman has a right to take without paying. He has a right of a babu to indulge in corruption. So this is a phenomenon in underdeveloped countries which were under king's rule. As for example, I will give an example. One king of Mayurbhanj in Odisha, he saw a man in tattered clothes and asked me, "What's your problem?" He said, "I have no job." Then he gave him a job. He said, "You are a forest guard." And after some days the king went and asked him, he was in the same tattered clothes. He said, "What's your problem? I gave you a job." He said, "Hajur, there is no pay." He said, "I will give you a job and pay also, you are useless." So that's what we inherited. So it takes time, a social consciousness has to develop, and each organization's internal vigilance has to develop. It's not an investigating agency which can create and make permanent solutions to the menace of corruption which is eating into the vitals of our society.
Apart from the social phenomena, which obviously is beyond the purview of a head of an agency such as you are, you have been in the police, you have been associated with many initiatives and processes looking at crime. What reform would you like to see in the structures, in the systems of policing, of investigation, of tackling crime that you feel will begin to make a difference? Obviously, we need both ends. Few societies have been able to eliminate the aspect of policing, of investigation, of courts, of judiciary, of prosecution, and only leave it to social processes. So looking at this other end of the spectrum, what reforms would you recommend?
Police was used an instrument to perpetuate their empire by the Britishers. That's the history of Indian police. And we have inherited that background. People have the perception of fear to police. Even I am scared of going in front of a police station. When in childhood that fear was inculcated in us. This is not a new thing, because in Britain also, when the police, Robert Peel started policing, policemen also cut into pieces, thrown into river Thames. So the beginning, this country has got independence for last 50 years. Malimath committee has suggested many changes, procedural changes, but as I said you, the men who are there are important. And they are from the same society in which others have come. You tell me, you are blaming police, in which department, where do you get justice? I have to send a person thrice to go to Accountant General office to get my pay slip, and after that my GPF slip comes also blank. My father today goes, when he was there, now he is not there, pays 20 rupees in a Tahsil office to get his work done. In a rural hospital, people say if you go there, you go only to die. This society, the bureaucracy entire has not changed its attitude. And why police? Because a man goes to a police station when he is in distress. There is a burglary, there is a theft, there is an accident. At that time, when you behave badly, when you demand bribe, it pinches the society. Number two, they are also in uniform, putting on the state's emblem. So they are easily identifiable. Here is a traffic constable taking money. Look, they are corrupt. But and in other departments, both are beneficiaries. Here, both are not beneficiaries. Police is not able to hand over anything good to you. It can harass only. But for suppose a contractor and engineer, they live very happily with the bribe. No complaint. Things are getting easier by giving bribe. They can get their work done. So I don't say that police by doing this is good, but an orientational change is required, a training by way of a training, and I am sure with passage of time things will improve. And there are many bright police officers who are doing very well also, and some places like Maharashtra, like other Bombay police, they have earned a good name, and that we are trying for these two things: procedural changes, legal changes, and to build up the material that is more important to handle this department.
You're watching a conversation with the Director of the Central Bureau of Investigation. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to my continuing conversation with Mr. Shankar Mishra, Director of the Central Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Mishra, above all, you're a citizen of India, you're a human being, and I sense so much anguish, personal anguish from you about the state of, shall we say, the law enforcement agencies, the investigation agencies. How do you as an individual who spent your career in this profession reconcile the pain that you experience with the inefficiencies and the injustices of the system at the human level?
Should I tell you frankly, God might be kind to me. I have handled very important assignments. I have been district SP for 6-7 years. I was in Indian Parliament handling security, daily praying God that nothing happens today. And I was also in the Central Bureau of Investigation. I was in the State Police Headquarters. We are blaming politicians too much. Politicians also know what you are made of. It is a different matter. You don't get a good posting for the time being. But what image you create always travels. And that is, to that extent they will interfere with you. But you have a nexus, and your personality, everything is judged, they know. And accordingly the interference will be there. Otherwise, we are blowing out of proportion the political interference. But certain philosophies which I have always observed, I have always spoken to my subordinates that remember, you are a public servant. Servant means naukar, not the master. That has been throughout in my mind, and my father told two things when I joined IPS, which was always in my mind. First, God has given you power at such young age not to harm but to help. So any decision I have taken in my life, always I have thought whether I can help this man, not harm him. And the second, he said that it is very difficult, easy to get IPS but difficult to protect it. That was always in my mind. So, and honesty, integrity, these things are not the qualities. These things were supposed to be. People are now, we are referring him as he is not corrupt, as if it is a qualification with him. It is as good as saying he is not a thief. So corrupt, to be honest, you are supposed to be. But what after that?
Today there is a controversy about tainted ministers. There is concern that there are politicians who are under investigation by the CBI. How does that make you feel?
You see, I don't want to comment on that, but as the law stands today, there is no bar for anybody to contest or become a minister unless he is convicted by a court of law. If that's the position, then we can't say anything. I have no opinion on that.
Without looking at these specific ministers and not putting you sort of in a corner on that issue, but looking at the state of politics, you sort of offered in a sense a defense a short while ago of politicians and said it's not just the politicians, it's all of us. And I meant that working in Parliament and watching the processes of governance in India closely, and I will spare you the embarrassment of looking at specific issues or individuals, but in a general sense, what was your feeling about and your response to the political process?
You see, I cannot comment on that, but the student of political science, of all forms of government, the best is democracy. However enchanting the aristocracy may be, you can't go back to that. So, and in the form of democracy also, the best is parliamentary democracy. The any student of political science will say. Now, in our country, the parliamentary democracy is only 40 to 50 years, and a multi-party system has grown. As a result of which, it is undergoing a process of churning, and I am sure it will get settled in the years to come. And same thing was in Britain, which is the mother of Indian parliamentary democracy. There were multi-party, there was instabilities. France, government fell one after another. So to me that, as you said, why only blame politicians? We talked about bureaucracy, we talked about police, we talked about the entire social milieu in which we are all living. So to me it appears it is a process in which we are going, we will definitely should be hopeful to go in a better way in future.
And I started this program by, by telling viewers that you were described as someone who could get along with the devil. What do you think that this press reporter really meant? As an investigating officer, as a director of CBI, you have to work and look at a lot of devils. So why is it important to get along with them?
No, that he wrote, probably if there is a devil in your own organization, then I try to get along with that.
So do you have a lot of devils in your organization?
Look, my father-in-law, who was also a DG of police, had said that when you are not sure how your children will be, how can you be sure what type of boss you will have or subordinate you have? So there are different types of people. So what is the concept of management? Management is because you cannot be getting your people suitable to your sentiment and your ideas. So if you want to run the organization, then there may be a devil there, there may be a good man there, because I don't consider anybody a devil, because everybody has a bad side and a good side. So try as much as possible to exploit his good side, and for the greater interest of the organization. The organization is supreme. So for the interest of the organization, if you want to run it well, then you have to get along with these people and extract work from them. Because it is very difficult to throw a peon even. You have a process laid down in the constitution to throw out a person from the job. If you can't throw out, you should be intelligent enough to put up with him and get work from him, rather than always having you shouting and you will have blood pressure, others will have blood pressure. So pleasantly and nicely how to get along with people, get work from them is very, very important.
You mentioned that everybody has a good side and a bad side. And we want to look at sort of, the moral issue of it, but let's look at strengths and weaknesses. What would you consider to be your greatest strength, and what would you consider your greatest weakness?
That I have never thought, because I always thought that, as I said earlier to you, the personality. Personality is not acquired. Personality around 80% comes automatically in your blood, in your get-up, in your family background. That is more or less responsible. So I never thought that I am more efficient, I am more intelligent and more bright than my colleagues or anybody. But somehow or other, I have been successful, I have never been frustrated, and I carried on in my career smoothly. I only thank my father and God above that I could be successful and reach this position.
Are you a religious person? Do you believe in a God that drives you and gives you this certitude and self-confidence and clarity?
I am a great believer of God, and I pray God always for myself, for others, for the family, for the society, because apart from a police officer, I am also a Rotarian, and I am fond of traveling, fond of meeting with people, fond of getting along with them. That has been my extracurricular activities always, and I also jot down things which may write after I retire because there is no time to write down. But the basic thing is that I have been always trying to help people, and which my father said that God has given power to you to help and only help, never harm. Even I have given good cheats to bad fellows for their career progression, but ultimately they have failed. But I have tried to uplift those bad elements in the organization also, lest they may not be a liability, but of some help to the organization. This attitude, positive attitude, perhaps helped me to go along without having blood pressure or diabetic till now.
Thank you very much, sir. That has been a great privilege, and I'd like to
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.